here.
Hello and welcome to Cinema Subculture, where we discuss everything strange, obscure and downright messed up in the world of movies. My name's Gary.
And I'm Simon. Gary, I've got a wee idea. How do you fancy following me around with a camera, right, whilst I torture, mutilate and murder some punters? Does that sound like a laugh to you?
As long as it's a DV video grade from around circa 2001.
So you want it in the lowest quality video camera we can get, is what you're saying?
Yeah, it sounds up my
I mean, I think that sounds legit to me. Yeah, cool, let's do
None of your high
it.
def shite. None of your 4K stuff. You know what I'm saying?
That's it. You've got to stop dreaming, you know what I mean? You've got to schedule it and then it becomes reality, you know?
Aye,
Put a date in the diary. We'll do that.
sounds good, man.
Anyway, on another unrelated matter, what are we talking about today?
August Underground is a 2001 found footage horror film. It follows a serial killer named Peter and his unnamed accomplice as they kidnap, torture and murder a series of random victims. The film is entirely shot from the POV of Peter's sidekick in a series of single-take POV shots on a consumer-grade video camera. The film is regularly cited as among the most disturbing films ever made.
So first of all, who's meant to have found this footage? I like that bit at the beginning, usually, of these types of films where you get the, Rab was out in his garden and he found a bag of tapes and it had this film on it and it's been edited together for your viewing pleasure.
Well, I think, you're right. Generally, these type of films as well, a wee preamble at the start. But I think the lack of that makes it more authentic. Because if it was a real
Yeah, okay,
found
yeah,
video,
I see what you mean.
you wouldn't have that.
So what you're saying is that you, or in the case of me watching it, I are the ones who have found it. Like it's meant to be like the viewer who's watching it, that you found it. You know what I mean? It's kind of like that, isn't it?
I
I suppose.
What Vogel originally intended to do was he wasn't even sure if he was going to release it on a mass scale. He wanted to just make a tape and leave it in a public place, which is quite interesting.
Oh, geez, right,
but
okay.
then 9/11 happened, so he didn't want to be
Right.
leaving videos lying about in case he was considered some kind of terrorist.
So what do you think of it?
My take on this film is it's an interesting experiment that doesn't really succeed, but I do have a lot of respect for the directorial intention of the film, in the sense that it takes the found footage idea, it takes film realism, and it goes to the max. But ultimately, the paradox of that, what this film succeeds in doing is showing the paradox of found footage to me. One of the complaints about found footage movies is that they're not really found footage because you can see the filmmaking in them. But what this does is strips pretty much every tangible element of filmmaking that you can see on screen in a movie, strips it away till you're left with it's just a realistic as you can get depiction of two people doing stuff, wandering around, in this case a serial killer and his accomplice. But I think when you do that, when you strip out all the traditional elements of film grammar, filmmaking that give a film an emotional impact, it just leaves it completely neutral, which is a strange one, because even though some of the images on screen are quite disturbing, quite brutal, very brutal, to me it left me quite flat. I wasn't overly emotional about it. It's grueling to watch, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily disturbing, just from the lack of filmmaking technique that would normally accompany those type of scenes to give it a emotional impact on the audience.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with pretty much most of what you're saying. I was kind of left with the kind of feeling of, what was the intention of the filmmaker here? Not necessarily in the stylistic choices or the kind of format of the film, but more the like the content of the film. It felt like you know the way that like so you know the way that like Slacker like has these like scenarios it kind of bounces from. But there's some. It feels like there's connective tissue there with that film from scenario to scenario. This just felt like 3 or 4 different scenarios kind of put together, and I couldn't quite. I don't know. I didn't really. I kind of was left flat as well. Like the same type of thing, but I couldn't quite understand what kind of not necessarily story, but what we're trying to get at here. It just felt kind of, which is a shame, really, because I think something you said there about it being flat, right? I had the exact same reaction. I almost felt nothing watching the film, like from a like kind of from the gore point of view, because I knew it was all fake, right? Because I knew it's a film. I guess none of the on-screen stuff really hit me very hard, if that makes sense. I think it would have been really interesting to have seen this with like some sort of, you know, the media build up around Blair Witch when it first came out. Like a lot of people when they first saw that thought it was legit and a real found footage film. It would have been interesting to see this, to come across this and not know anything behind it, and see what my reaction would have been then. But yeah, I always. I mean, we've chatted before. And I always go back to something like Human Centipede 2 that really did have an effect on me, and this, like, I just felt really detached from it. Because I knew that what I was seeing wasn't necessarily real. I was looking for the you know, the seams, you know, and whilst I think the gore and stuff like that, especially on the mini DV format, works really well and looks really, you know, it looks really good and legit and really authentic.
Right.
I was still trying to kind of look to see how have they done that, if that makes sense, you know what I mean? And I found that some of the performances a little bit arch, but I don't know if that's, again, we are like 20 years removed from the film now. It's hard to tell, but I think mostly it was the camera guys laughing like stuff. Just kind of eventually I was like, I don't know, something about it felt like it was forced. But yeah, I had that same feeling. I went in with a really kind of like brace yourself type feeling, kind of the feeling that I had before I saw something like Antichrist, you know, that way, like. And whilst we had a chat about that, and we chatted about, you know, we talked about that in the podcast, and whilst I didn't think it was necessarily, it didn't deserve so I personally didn't think it deserved the ridicule it was getting for being so extreme. That film still affected me, and I felt it, you know, it still really worked and was effective in what it was trying to do. Whereas this, as I say, I just felt like I was bouncing around the scenarios and not really getting much from it. You know, it was kind of, it wasn't like a difficult watch, but I was expecting it to be a really difficult watch and grueling and kind of, and you know, I almost chatted to you about, you know, up front before we watched it, like, you know, I don't know, like, you know, sometimes I don't know if I'm in the place I want to be watching something that sounds this dark.
Right.
If that makes sense, just from a mental health point of view, just, you know, because, you know, things are weird at the moment in the world, so you try to maybe like sometimes stay in the kind of fun area, if that makes sense, of stuff to watch. But I watched it and I didn't really have any of that, and I'm glad it didn't really take me anywhere too dark personally. But I suppose that's not necessarily a good thing for the filmmaker's intention.
Yeah, I think it's easy to be quite, you know, I think the stuff in the film that is quite misogynistic, and it'd be easy to take it in bad faith or to be disgusted by the kind of tone of the film and sort of how the killers sort of ridicule the victims and stuff like that. And I think that's a fair takeaway. But when I was listening to like some of Vogel's interviews and stuff, I think his intention is not really clear from the film itself, but he was explaining how his intention was to make something that was a real serial killer movie from a kind of moral point of view, to display violence as it really is in real life. Because he said he was kind of bored with mainstream horror, and now it was too kind of vanilla. It was too soft, almost, on serial killers. It didn't portray them as nasty and horrible and brutal as they really were. So that was what he kind of wanted to do. He said he wanted to make the most disturbing, realistic and nihilistic film he could and make it an anti-serial killer movie. So I kind of admire that intention, but I don't know if that kind of comes through from the text itself. I think one of the things you brought up was the laughing of the cameraman, which I think spoils it as well, because it kind of, you've got the cameraman who just has this kind of maniacal laugh going through when the character of Peter, the main serial killer, it just does horrible things to victims, and but it gives it a kind of cartoonish quality. It takes away from the disturbing nature of some of the things that are happening. Especially, I thought the scene where they pick up the hitchhiker and then she's eventually beaten to death and the camera shoots it at a distance, and but the cameraman's just laughing, but it makes it just like something out of a cartoon rather than like a really brutal death scene. So I think that's something that doesn't quite work tone wise.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah. That day, well, not really a death scene because she's still alive at the end of it, but yeah, that scene really, I can't, what's coming, but it was really kind of, because it also, you're obviously not, because it's obviously playing it for realism, you're not getting any sound really from inside the car, even though I don't know, maybe something could have been done, but I think that like was really like just not. It stands out as a kind of like something like that extreme of like something really brutal and horrible is happening, but on the other side, it's like you're not. The audio is not connecting you with it, if you know what I mean, in a weird way. All those things that filmmakers do to make you, to make audio affect you, kind of feel missing from that. Now, I mean, I don't know if that's I was gonna say, I don't know if that's a comment on us as the watcher, because this is still a horrible thing we're seeing, but I think it also kind of looked like it wasn't really hitting her. So, right, but yeah, for the cameraman role, I mean, it almost feels like, just when you were describing it there, it might have been helpful if he was kind of, if we saw maybe a change, if the story, the arc for him was that he was kind of into something that was going on at the beginning, maybe not quite as extreme as we go straight into, and then he slowly gets to the point where he's not into it, and we kind of, as the Peter character takes it further. I mean, I'm in certain story here where there's, I'm not trying to fix the film, but that to me might have made us as the watcher really, kind of connect a bit more.
Yeah.
But it's hard to say. I felt like it didn't make me hate these guys. It didn't make me like them. It didn't make me feel much of them, other than I don't like that guy laughing. No, you know what I mean? It didn't really. I don't know. I thought we were going to get a sweet. Well, we'll talk about like, some of the stuff that happened. I thought we were going to get a sweet moment for some reason. I don't know why. Like with the when he helps the old lady with her shopping and stuff. I thought are they trying some sort of juxtaposition where it's like, the serial killer thing where he's the most normal guy and he was always the nicest guy. You know what I mean? And even helped old Mary with her bags into her house. And she's like, I would never believe it, or something. But no. We kind of just went to to the next victim,
Yeah, I've maybe got a wee bit more time for this film than most people would, because I'm a big fan of realism in film, and I find long takes and stuff that's like super minimal, almost playing as close to reality as it can be. I find that quite captivating. Usually, and I'm usually into anything that kind of is a rejection of traditional filmmaking methods. I find that quite interesting, and I think you have to give the film props, because I can't think of anything that plays as realistically as this.
Not.
But it's almost to the point it's not a movie.
Yeah.
But whatever a movie is.
I think you're right. I can't think of anything that plays it as real. Like, you know, there are films that have realism or realistic, you know, interpretations in it, but you know, even like something like the Blair Witch, to come back to that, like there's definitely set pieces in that are really like set up and shot, whether they're meant to be shot by the you know, the people in the situations themselves or not. They're very choreographed, whereas this doesn't feel like that at all. You're right, it does. In the single takes, you know, the long takes, and the kind of, you're right, it does deserve props for that. And I think the actual what it must have taken to get it and to actually make it, you know, I think that deserves some credit as well, because the long takes, the actors involved, including the director, and even the person filming, I think that there's a lot in there that's, you know, that you kind of don't see, and that's the point. You know, that's why there's a credit to them, because they've done quite a lot in there, and there's a lot of stuff that is just so real, but it obviously wasn't, so it had to be staged, and that's the point. You know what I mean? It's like the fact that they've got it to look so real. It did have me wondering, like, you know, certain sections when they're pestering the guy in the shop initially, you know, is that just some kind of, you know, some jackass kind of, you know, they're just filming and tormenting this guy, like, and they don't, you know, he doesn't know he's in a film or whatever, you know. But then the way that goes, you kind of assume that they've had at least a conversation with him. So yeah, no, you're right. That does deserve a lot of credit, because that is difficult to pull off, I think, and make it look real, which it does.
But then the follow-on point to that is, for a lot of this movie, you're kind of thinking to yourself, why is this in a film?
Yeah.
There's a lot of long scenes that are just like nothing scenes, really boring. When they're not like doing the torture and the murder set pieces, there's a lot of it following the characters just around. They go to an abattoir, they go to a shop.
Yeah, that was weird. Yeah, but I suppose it's like a traditional horror film. You kind of like, what is this setting up? Was the kind of feeling I had. Where are we going with this? Is this going to end in an assault or a murder or a kidnapping, whatever? So it kind of does its job there. Like, I know what you're saying, like, but I think the framing device of the film kind of, like, even though I think, yeah, you're right, why, you know, there's a lot of stuff that's like, why is this in the film, but I think it kind of almost justifies itself with what it's kind of showing you, and that's where the suspense is coming from, perhaps, or where it's trying to build some suspense, because you don't know what scenario is going to end in something brutal.
Well, my kind of take in that, like, a lot of the non-violent scenes just play like something out of Jackass to me, like really bad.
Yeah.
Sub-Jackass level reality television type stuff. It does have quite a sort of level of immaturity in a lot of it. But to me, I think the motivation behind those scenes was to make the whole thing appear like just a random tape. You know what I mean?
So yes,
you know, back in the day when you had like a DV cam, it would just play a series of random shit on it, like. And I wonder if those scenes are meant, those like nothing scenes are meant to be almost like the animal killing scenes in Cannibal Holocaust. In a way, they're to make you believe it's more real, to trick you into thinking, oh well, if the animal killings are real, maybe the human killings are real. It might be to do that type of thing as well, but at the same time, there's too much of that. It's too long. It just gets boring. It's not adding anything to the film, especially the last scene with the prostitutes. You're waiting for the end at that point. The idea's run its course. I think maybe if it was a half an hour movie, it could sustain itself better. But so it almost, by making it more real, making it almost like someone's shit home videotape, you almost counter. It's counterproductive to the impact you want it to have in a way, even though you're succeeding in making it more real. So there's a kind of paradox going on there.
Yeah, it does bring you back to that age-old question of found footage stuff. A lot of found footage stuff, because I think some managed to justify it. But you know, why is he filming? Like,
right?
You know, like, you know, that way, like, because if he's not filming to film the brutal scene, you know, the brutality and the kind of murders and the torture and stuff like that, and the kind of fuckeroundery with people, the other stuff, it's like, yeah, you could say it's like kind of bits and pieces that are on a tape that just happen to be there, but like, I don't know, like, why would they just, you know, sometimes why would they film at that point?
Well, I think this is a found footage film that doesn't have that problem, in a sense.
Well, I don't know.
Like, if in a found footage horror movie, you've got character in jeopardy, and you're thinking, why is he still holding the camera?
Yeah,
but it's just two buddies. It's like the guy who's always filming shit, and there's no reason for him not to be holding the camera. Because he's also a psychopath. Like, who wants to film.
I'm trying to remember, like, many of the members of the public who were in the kind of non-violent scenes, did any of them challenge them on, like, why are you filming?
No.
You know what I mean? No, because that's right. Like, you know, I'm just, you know, because that would have been the kind of he films everything. I don't know, like, you know what I mean? Right, just, right. It feels like, or he's got a new camera or something. You know what I mean? Just, I don't know, you know. But no, I know what you're saying. You're right. Yeah, because the camera person isn't in jeopardy. But
there is one moment. They go to like a gas station, and like the cameraman's in the car. Peter's outside the car waiting to fill up, and he's getting filmed. And then Peter's like, "What are you doing? Why are you filming me?" I think that's only mentioned of anything like that.
You're right, Peter. This is the time I shouldn't be filming. You're right. Okay, so yeah, so we talked about the prostitute scene. Yeah, that did kind of, yeah, and I felt the payoff and the ending was a bit. I didn't really, and you know, I saw it coming, kind of thing. You know, I felt it took too long for the other prostitute to react to the I mean, what would you call that? Extreme donkey punch? I don't know what that move is with the hammer. Like, but she took a bit long to react to it. But so yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I would have, like, would it have been better, do you think, if it was centrally focused on the couple that were in the basement at the beginning? You know, if that had been just it? Do you think we needed all the other stuff? I mean, I thought the stuff in the supermarket was kind of a bit of a change of pace, but I thought, for example, the old woman was a bit throwaway. No, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that you didn't get much out of that scene, because you saw the old woman and then the next minute she was just lying on the floor. So it didn't have much impact. But I think the elements of the film that did have a lot of filmmaking intention were more than the makeup, the effects, production design, which were all, like, a lot of effort was put into that, obviously. Fred Vogel was a makeup and effects teacher at the Tom Savini School.
Oh wow, okay.
So he's quite high level in his effects work and stuff already. Wow. So that's why you had the kind of ability to do this.
I mean, you can tell it's good.
Really and good. The production design in the basement, I think, is really well done. It's really grimy, super realistic, and you know, you feel like that girl's been sitting on that chair for days.
Yeah, especially when they go back to her over the second or third time, and she's kind of like non-responsive. You're right. It's like, it's that kind of, you know, the kind of thing we said about, or I said about Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You can kind of feel the grime coming off and the, you know, the heat and the dirt and everything just coming off, and the smell, I suppose, coming out of the screen. Yeah, no, it did. It really was effective.
Yeah, so I think they took their time to get that right on camera, whereas, like, they basically removed every other element of traditional filmmaking.
I think, I mean, was the decision to shoot it mini DV, was that just the technology of the time? I guess that was kind of what they had at the time. That was kind of most readily available consumer camera, wasn't it? Yeah. So there was nothing, there was no kind of like hope, like, you know, going for like a Super 8 kind of, you know, that the kind of low technology of the date. Maybe there was, maybe, you know, it was what was available, and you know, what would have been available to these characters, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think they just wanted to make something super cheap and something that was, you know, played as realistic as possible. So that would be the camera it would get shot on. Like, if you see it as it's shot on film, then immediately you think your mind splits.
exactly.
But saying that was, I don't know, maybe because we're used to found footage and used to horror movies, you were saying how as you start watching you knew it wasn't real, so it had no impact. But maybe that's not true for everyone.
No, I think, yeah, I think you're right. I think, yeah, there's definitely horror films that affect me more than other films that I can watch a lot of, like, I don't know, for some reason, like ghost stuff, like supernatural stuff can freak me out quite a bit more and have more of an effect on me, a lasting effect on me than any slasher or kind of, gore or anything like that. But then there's, as I say, there's like things like the Human Centipede 2 that did really have an effect on me. But so weirdly, knowing that this, I think that yeah, it's maybe a combination of knowing that it was not real and the kind of removal of a lot of those like filmmaking techniques, like the music and certain sound effects. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's some sort of nexus there. But you're right. I think I don't know if people would be disturbed by the film necessarily, or just not want to watch it because of the content. It's hard to say because there are people that just wouldn't watch this because of the content, and even as it starts, they would just be like, turn this off. I could see that being more the case for this film, because yeah, you'd have to not preface or not tell them anything. They'd have to know that it was an actual film that was made. I think,
Yeah,
right? But it's like people that watch like the beheading videos and stuff like that of people. I personally, I don't like. That's not what I want to watch, right? But if you told me that was fake and it was all, and here's the actor and they're like, then it wouldn't affect me probably, and I'd be okay watching it. Whereas there's some people that it won't matter whether that it's real or fake or not, and yeah. But I really would have been interested to see the reaction to this had it been just, and I know that in some instances it has been kind of found in the director's possession actually, when he was traveling, and they thought it was just like well, a snuff film essentially. So I'd be
yeah,
interested to see someone's reaction who had no prior knowledge of it and just was taken at face value, which I think, as you say, was his intention.
this sort of story about how it was sort of circulated very minimally at first, um, which maybe would have given it more in a lure. Because when you're watching it on a DVD, it's like the mythology is gone, kind of. But because
Yeah.
there was only Vogel only released like a few sort of VHS tapes to people at first, and then it was one that get passed around. Oh, you got to see this, got to see that. So that gives it more of a vibe, like the kind of the same way as the kind of
Sure.
bootleg tapes of the video nasties were going about
Yeah.
in the 80s. So if you saw it like that, then maybe you might have bought into it a bit more. But
Yeah, I think, yeah, I could definitely see me, 20 years ago when this first came out, like seeing this and believing that it was real and being pretty disturbed by it. Even probably now, but the internet's too readily available, so I would have googled it. But you know what I mean? Like, yeah, no, I can definitely see if you have any kind of thought in your mind that this is a real found footage video, then it's pretty, yeah, it's pretty extreme.
so Simon, what's your final thoughts on August Underground?
It's a well-made found footage film that, for me, doesn't have much going for it, like in its kind of narrative, or like, the story of, as you will, feels a bit like it doesn't have enough there to justify its runtime. Even, I think perhaps you mentioned before, if it had been a short film, I think it could have been more impactful. And yeah, I think it is ruined by the fact that I know that it is something that's been made and produced. But I don't think I wish, really, to be honest, the way that I'd seen it, not knowing that it was that it was made, because I probably would have been pretty disturbed by it. The effects are really good. The acting is not that great, but I think you could, if you believed it was found footage for real, I think you could probably get past that, and just the kind of maybe immaturity of the characters, or the kind of fringe nature of the kind of characters. Yeah, I probably won't be revisiting this one.
Yeah, I'd say it's a mildly interesting experiment in what happens when you push realism as far as it'll go. But ultimately, I think the intention of the film is not conceived. The idea of like really turning you against violence or making you reviled by violence doesn't really. It's not the feeling that you get from watching this film. It's more just a feeling of like flat neutrality. I mean that intention is quite similar to what Gaspar Noé did with Irreversible, which is a film that does punch you in the face and it shakes you to your core. And this kind of has the same intention, but it leaves you sitting in a chair.
Yeah. Not to jump over your conclusion there, but kind of, I was going to say that when we were talking about the director's intent of showing violence as kind of as real as it can be, because we made a similar argument, if I remember correctly, when we were talking about Irreversible, about the rape scene and the violence in that film, about the kind of realism and making it abhorrent to the watcher. Like, it shouldn't be that you shouldn't want to watch this. These are horrible things that are happening. Which, yeah, I feel was slightly lost here. Maybe because of the absences, as I say, of some of those traditional filmmaking techniques. But anyway, sorry, not to.
Yeah, you don't. This film, you kind of want to stop watching it, just mostly because it's so boring.
Yeah. And with that, oh, cool.
So you've been listening to Cinema Subculture. If you've enjoyed this content, please make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, like the video and hit the notification bell.
Okay, thanks for listening. I've been Simon.
I've been Gary.
Keep it extreme.
It was a nightmare.